We're in another intensely emotional section of Ramayana where Bharata has to bear the burden, not only the burden of the kingdom for 14 years till Ram comes back, but he has to bear the burden of people mistrusting him. All the emotion that they have for Ram and feeling sorrowful that Ram has to go into the forest for 14 years like a criminal. Because, I mean, from what I understand, this kind of treatment of sending somebody in the forest for some time in exile like that is it's the consequence of some very severe crime. I mean, sages go to the forest because they want to be there. And other people, I mean, we don't know, I don't know so much about their system of jails and other things that for people that are criminals. But really bad behavior, rather than kill somebody, execute them, they just banished. Something like that. We're going to be hearing tomorrow for the Sunday program something that's from Ramayana as well as from the Bhagavatam, and that is the descent of the Ganges. And in the and both the beginning part is a little different, but both have the whole story of King Sagra in the line of the Ikshvaku dynasty and his 60 sons and his one son. He had two wives, Sagra, two queens, and there were no children. They went to the forest. One sage gave a benediction that one of your wives will have 60,000 sons and another one will have one. And so the wives wanted to know who's who. And he said, I'll leave it up to you guys. Fortunately, the one that wanted 60,000 got 60,000, and the one that wanted the one got one. But that one, Anshuman's father's name was, do you recall? Anshuman? So the son of Sagara, his name was something. It starts with an A. I can't remember his name. And his son was Anshuman. Anshuman is the one who found the horse with Lord Kapila-Dev. So the son of Sagra, the one son of Sagra, the Bhagavatam says in his previous life he was a mystic yogi. But somehow, doesn't say how, somehow he came into bad association. And in that bad association, he became corrupted and fallen. So in his next life, there's a Sanskrit term for people who can remember their previous lives, but he remembered his previous life as a mystic yogi, and now he's the son of a king. And so he did something like, but different from what Jad Bharat did. Jad Bharat, having been a deer, and before that, Bharat Maharaj. So this son, whose name I can't remember, was very wicked. He just did bad things. One of the bad things he did that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam is there were some boys that were playing by the side of a river, and he threw them in the river and they drowned. And people were like, he's the son of a king and he's throwing children in the river and they drowned. So he brought them to the shore and brought them back to life. And people were like, wow. And then he left for the forest. He wasn't banished to the forest, but he didn't want to be involved in getting involved in government activities. He was a mystic yogi. Anyway, narrating that as an example of sometimes persons were sent to the forest. Well, the story of the Dandak forest. One of the sons of Ikshvaku was known by his astrological chart. He was going to be really bad and worthy of being punished. So he was given the name Dunda. And he was given a kingdom in the forest because he was bad. They didn't kill him, but send him to the forest. Though he did some bad stuff, and then he became the Danda Karanya. So being sent to the forest was a very severe punishment. And Barata, we read yesterday, when he came back and understood how Ram's perfectly sinless. He's perfectly noble. He's perfect. He's a perfect person. How is it? What has he done? Was it this or was it that? Was it the other thing? To deserve to be. When he heard what it was, he was enraged. Anyway, but everyone, starting with Kaushalya and everybody else, the one by one, they thought he was behind it. He and Kaikeyi had conspired. Well, now you have your kingdom, and I'm going to die, and you'll be happy because you and Kaikeyi can rule the kingdom. I hope you're happy. Ram and Sita have gone to the forest with tree bark, and so he had to bear that. So that has something to do with his name, Bharata. I forget the etymology, but there's something about when the name giving was done by Vishishta. It has something to do with he had to bear burden. He had to bear the burden of the kingdom, the bear burden of mistrust. And it happened again and again. And it's going to happen again. And it's really heavy. It's really heavy. The Shamataka jewel story has a similar, when someone, you're blamed for some really bad thing and you didn't do it. When you're mistrusted and people talk badly about something that you did do, how do you bear it? And the answer, we discussed this yesterday, that, can you take notes? I want you to send me a note that says, I want to send a document to Madhavacharya about why the first demon killed by Ram and by Krishna was a woman, when you're not supposed to kill women. Well, there's a little document I want to send you. So the answer from yesterday was, you stand by the truth. His character was such that people could understand. He wasn't involved. I mean, he said it again and again and again very sincerely, but it's not just saying something, it was his character. And people from his character understood. He wasn't involved. But their emotions connected with Ram being banished was overwhelming them, thus suspecting that he was conspiring. The 14th day after the funeral, the king's counselors conferred and then spoke with Bharat. Wanting to install him as king, they said, as your elder brother has gone to the forest along with Lakshmana, there will be no sin in your superseding him and accepting the throne. Therefore, O jewel among men, be consecrated as our ruler and protect us with justice and compassion. The counselors showed Bharata the seat and coronation paraphernalia, which had been prepared for Ram's installation. Exactly as Ram had done, however, Bharata walked around the seat in respect and said, I shall never accept the kingdom, passing over the pious Ram. All of you know well the rule of in our race. The kingship is always conferred upon the eldest brother. By the way, I did some research in this too. What was the time interval between the four brothers? Because they all received three mothers received the payasam at the same time. So what, according to Ramayana, 1 year passed and then the children were born. So what it gives in Valmiki Ramayana is the sign in which they were born, meaning when the moon passes through a certain nakshatra, that's the sign, the star sign for that. So someone that knows astronomy and astrology explained their successive lunar mansions. So some astrologers say it was in 3 successive days, but because it takes 22 hours to pass from the moon to pass through one nakshatra to the next, some astrologers say Ram was born at noon on the Navami, and Bharata was born in the morning of the next day, the Dasami, and the two brothers were born in the evening, but at least, very close intervals. So the older brother isn't like he's so many years older. He's like a day or a half a day or 3/4 of a day older, but he's the older brother. Just like when there's twins, the one that's born first is the elder brother, although they're twins. Anyway, that's the little detail. The kingship is always conferred upon the eldest brother. Therefore, Ram will be the ruler of this earth. Let a large and powerful army be made ready, for we shall go to the forest to bring back Ram. Bharata pointed to the paraphernalia. Taking all these items, we shall perform Ram's coronation even in the forest. You may then bring him back in honor as the king. I myself shall remain there in his place for 14 years. I shall never allow my mother to realize her wicked ambition. Bharata became enlivened as he contemplated the possibility of bringing Ram home. He felt sure that Ram could be convinced to return when he saw Bharata coming to get him with all the people of Ayodhya. He ordered that expert architects and engineers construct a road to the forest. The work should begin immediately, and they would leave as soon as possible. I mean, it's a longer dialogue in Valmiki Ramayana, but all the Brahmin counselors applauded Bharata, saying, "Very good, it shall be done." And they blessed Bharata, and he felt delighted in mind. His face lit up with joy, and tears flowed from his eyes. Thinking of Ram and his imminent return, everyone found their grief dispelled. Paragraph. Thousands of skilled men were employed in the task of building the road. Absorbed in thoughts of Ram, they worked swiftly, leveling land to lay out the broad road paved with great slabs of red stone. The work was carried out as quickly as possible. Wells were dug with large ponds and large ponds excavated. Trees were planted along the edge of the road to provide shade, and fragrant gardens were laid out at intervals. The great highway was decorated with festoons and sprinkled with scented water mixed with sandalwood paste. Along the way, tent encampments enclosed by wide moats were erected for the army. Temples were constructed, and images of Vishnu and the gods were installed and worshipped. In some places, wealthy men had mansions built, and villages grew up around these houses. The road extended from Ayodhya all the way to the Ganges, strewn with various forest flowers. It appeared like a pathway made by the gods and leading to the heavens. Within less than a month, the road was complete. Bharata summoned Sumantra and ordered him to have the army prepare to leave. In great eagerness, the army chiefs prepared everything for the journey to the forest, mounting upon his own golden car, drawn by 6 pairs of horses. That's 12 horses. Bharata set out from the city. He was followed by 9,000 elephants, 60,000 chariots, and 100,000 infantry. 100,000. And all the royal counselors and priests accompanied him, as well as Dasrath's 3 wives. The procession from Ayodhya consisted of thousands of citizens of all classes. It made its way slowly toward the forest. Merchants set out shops, and artisans and craftsmen of all kinds plied their trade along the road. Thousands of Brahmins, their minds absorbed in meditation, followed the procession on bullock carts, uttering benedictions and prayers. After some days, Bharat arrived near Shringavera, where Ram's friend Guha lived. Halting on the bank of the Ganges, the prince set up camp. Bharata descended from his chariot along with Shatrughna and went down to the riverbank, where he lay down in prostrated obeisances. Along with his brother and Dasrath's wives, he offered Ganges water to the king's departed soul. Guha had seen Bharata's approach and said to his counselors, "Uh-oh, this huge army appears to be a sea without any shore. I see in the distance a towering banner bearing the emblem of Barata. Surely he has come here wishing harm to Ram." Guha thought Bharata intended to kill Ram in order to establish his unchallenged right to the kingdom. Seeing the tremendous number of people accompanying Bharata, he felt fearful. "I think this prince will either bind us with chains or kill us, finding us entirely devoted to Ram," Guha continued. "Have our men stand ready with weapons and clothed in mail. The boats should each be filled with 100 warriors and should wait on the other side of the river. Ram is our Lord and Master, and we should do whatever is in our power to assist him." Guha decided to personally go to Bharata and discover his purpose. Taking various sweetmeats and fruits as an offering, he went with his chief ministers towards the prince's tent. As he approached nearby, Samantra saw him and informed Bharata, "Here comes the Nishada king Guha, accompanied by 1,000 of his men. He is Ram's friend, and he knows well everything about the forest. O noble prince, you should allow him to see you, for he will surely know Ram's whereabouts." Bharata immediately gave the orders that Guha should be shown into his tent. He came before Bharata and humbly bowed down, saying, "This kingdom is yours, O prince. As Ram's friend, you are my friend and indeed my lord. Be pleased to accept these foodstuffs and be pleased also in my house, to stay in my house. Allow my men to entertain your army tonight, and tomorrow you may leave refreshed to accomplish your purpose." Bharata could understand Guha's mind. He was pleased by his reception and by his devotion to Ram. He spoke gently to the Nishada ruler. "It is my pleasure to meet you, my dear friend of my brother. We are satisfied by your kind hospitality." Bharata pointed across the Ganges. "I'd heard Ram went that way, O king, towards Bharadwaj's hermitage. By which route should we proceed in order to find him, O king? Should we cross this river or go along its bank?" Guha was apprehensive. He looked down as he replied to Bharata. "Seeing your vast army, my mind was filled with fear. I trust that you wish no harm to Ram. If that is the case, then my ferryman can take you across the river and show you the way." Bharata reassured Guha, "May the time never come when any wickedness toward Ram may enter my heart. Do not have any doubts about me, O Guha. I am here to bring Ram back to Ayodhya. My glorious brother is as good as my father, and I long to see him again. Pray, point out his whereabouts to me, and I shall go and press his feet to my head. I mean, there's more in this exchange, and Valmiki Ramayana is like, than these other things. Tears sprang to Guha's eyes as he replied, there can be none equal to you on the globe, O jewel among men. Who else could renounce the rulership of the world? Surely your fame will be everlasting. Rest now for the night, and tomorrow I shall make all arrangements. Guha took his leave from Bharata, and the prince lay down to sleep. Thinking of Ram, he was seized with sorrow. Perhaps he would not be able to find him. Many months had passed since Ram had left. Who knows where he might be now? Bharata was unable to sleep. He was oppressed with an agony which weighed upon him like a heap of rocks. Heaving sighs, Bharata tossed around, immersed in thought of Ram. Gradually the dawn approached, and as the sun rose, Guha returned. The forest king again spoke to Bharat. He described how Ram had spent a night there, and then, after matting his hair, he left for the deep forest with Laxman and Sita. Guha indicated the way they had gone. Hearing how Ram had matted his hair, Bharata became apprehensive. Surely Ram would not now return. His resolve to remain an ascetic for 14 years must be firm. Seized with such thoughts, Bharata all of a sudden fell to the ground, saddened at heart. Chitrakut raised his brother, who sat shedding tears. Kaushalya and Sumitra quickly approached him and spoke comforting words. Bharata recovered his composure and said to Guha, tell me everything about Ram. What food did he eat? Where did he sleep? What did he say? Guha told Bharata how he had offered Ram many excellent cooked foods, but Ram had refused them, saying, it is never the duty of rulers to accept charity. Indeed, we should always give charity to others. Guha explained how Ram had drunk only water and then has slept upon a bed of grass laid out by Laxmana. Bharata asked to be shown the place where Ram slept, and Guha took him to the foot of the tree where the bed still lay. Seeing it, Bharata loudly exclaimed, alas! How can it be that one such as Ram should lay down on a bed of grass? He was ever accustomed to sleep at the top of high places, palaces, in rooms with golden floors spread with the finest rugs, having always been awoken by the sweet strains of music and song. How is it he now roused by the roar of wild beasts? Bharata lamented at length as the reality of Ram's exile and ascetic life struck him. The injustice was insufferable to Bharat, and it was made even more excruciating by the thought that he was the cause. His voice was filled with pain. This is truly incredible. It cannot be real. Surely I am dreaming. See here the strands of gold left by Sita, where she lay on these grasses, her delicate limbs pressed on the hard ground. I am ruined indeed, for it is on my account that all this has happened. Images of Ram and Sita dressed in forest attire, emaciated due to eating only fruits and roots, filled Bharata's mind. Beating his head, he cried out, from this day I shall wear matted locks and tree bark. I shall lay on the bare floor to sleep, and shall eat only simple forest fare. Bharat became even more determined to find Ram and bring him back to Ayodhya, staying himself in the forest in Ram's place. After spending another night sleeping on the spot where Ram had laid, Bharata had the army prepared to leave. Guha brought 500 large boats equipped with oarmen and sails. He offered his own personal boat to Barata and his relatives. Some boats were filled with women, some with horses, and others with chariots. As the boats plied across the river, the elephants swam with the flags on their backs, waving in the breeze. Many of the soldiers also swam while their equipment was carried in the boats. Late in the afternoon, the whole party assembled again on the other side of the river, ordering them to camp at that spot. Bharata went with Vashishta and other Brahmins to look for Bharadwaj's hermitage. Out of deference to the great sage Bharadwaj, whose only wealth was asceticism, Bharata approached him wearing only simple cloth, leaving his armor and weapons behind. With Vashishta at their head, the prince and his counselors went on foot and soon arrived at the sage's hermitage. As soon as he saw them at his door, the sage hurriedly rose and had his disciples fetch water to wash their feet. He embraced Vashishta and offered blessings to Bharata, who had fallen prostrate at his feet. Bharadwaj gazed at Bharata, whom he recognized as Ram's brother. The sage knew by his own mystic vision that Dasarath was dead. After inquiring about the situation in Ayodhya, the sage asked Bharata, here's another bombshell, what brings you all this way, leaving aside the onerous business of managing the state? Because of your mother's words, you are ruling the world as its undisputed monarch. I trust that you have not come here with some dark intention toward the sinless and perfect Ram. The sage's words cut into Bharata. Tears flowed from his eyes as he replied in a hurt voice, if even you impute such motives to me, then I am truly ruined. I never approved my mother's aims. I cannot even imagine doing harm to Ram, nor will I ever accept the kingdom. Feeling that no one would believe his innocence, Bharata felt despair. He folded his hands and spoke imploringly. The powerful Ram is the true ruler of the earth. I have come here to bring him back to Ayodhya. Falling at his feet, I shall make him return and then remain here in his place. O all-knowing sage, please be gracious to me and show me where Ram is staying. Bharata's sincerity was obvious. The all-knowing Bharadwaj smiled. He placed his hand upon Bharata's head, who sat before him weeping, and said, I surely know of your intention, and spoke only to heighten your resolve and indeed your fame. You are a worthy member of your royal line, O Prince, and you are always dedicated to the service of your elders. Your devotion to Ram is beyond doubt. The sage assured Bharata that he would point out Ram's whereabouts. He asked the prince to stay the night at his hermitage and leave the following morning. Bharata agreed, and the sage then offered to feed the entire army. Astonished, Barata said, we have already received sufficient hospitality from you, kind sir. As a forest dweller, you need only offer simple fruits, and this you have done. My army is vast and occupies a huge area of land. If I brought them here, they would all but wreck your holy site. Bharadwaj laughed and replied, have your army brought here forthwith. You should not doubt my ability to receive them, nor will they be any trouble at all. And then comes mystic displays. Commanded by the sage, Barata assented. Sending back one of his men, he had the army approach the hermitage. As they moved slowly through the forest, Bharadwaj sat in meditation. By uttering Vedic mantras, he invoked the presence of the principal gods. He then requested them to provide hospitality for the divine prince and his army. Seated in trance, the sage said within himself, let the sacred rivers bear to this region all kinds of celestial beverages. Let the moon god bring every sort of excellent cooked food. May the heavenly architect Vishwakarma create a suitable site for receiving the army. May Indra send him all his apsaras, along with the Gandharva's clan, to entertain these troops. As Bharadwaj invoked various divine beings with perfectly pronounced Sanskrit hymns, they all appeared before him. A cool and delightful fragrant breeze began to blow. Thick showers of flowers fell from the heavens, and the sound of celestial music was heard. As the Gandharvas sang and played upon venas, hosts of apsaras danced. All of Bharata's entourage who had assembled at the hermitage felt their hearts moved by the exquisite sights and sounds seen and heard everywhere. Before everyone's eyes, the entire area around the hermitage changed wonderfully. For a radius of 40 miles, the ground became even, carpeted with soft blue grass. Numerous types of fruit trees sprang up, full of ripe fruits. Mangoes, guavas, peaches, melons, and innumerable other soft and hard fruits were seen. Alongside streams of crystal clear water stood large white mansions furnished with seats and couches. A great palace appeared uh, that looked like a white cloud and had a large arched doorway. Delicious food and drink were laid out in these spacious buildings. Quite a yogi, huh? With Bharadwaj's permission, Bharata entered the palace, which was adorned with countless flower garlands and sprinkled with scents, seeing a golden throne. Bharata simply walked around it and sat on the seat next to it, surrounded by his chief ministers. Streams of sweetened milk and cream flowed past the palace. By Dwarja's mystic power, many trees in the hermitage came to life and began playing upon different musical instruments. Trees. Some of them assumed the forms of dwarfs and began to move about in haste, serving Bharata and his army. All around there appeared thousands of golden vessels containing food of every description. Heaps of steaming white rice were seen, along with tanks filled with milk drinks and yogurt. Pots of honey and large jars filled with intoxicating drinks stood next to platters containing delicious sweetmeats. Beautiful young maidens attended upon the soldiers, washing them and massaging their feet and bodies with fragrant oils. These celestial damsels, all adorned in pure silk garments, served the men food on golden plates. They're in the forest. Being maddened with pleasure, the troops laughed loudly and ran about in all directions. They praised Bharata and Ram again and again as they partook in every kind of enjoyable thing. Although they ate and drank huge amounts, they found that they were still not sated, meaning full. Their senses and minds became more and more enlivened, and they felt renewed and refreshed. Even the army's animals were carefully tended and given all kinds of food and drink by the celestial beings invoked by Bharadwaj. As the night ended, the troops saw before them numerous items of toiletry. Pots of hot water, along with soaps and unguents in silver and wooden cases, appeared. Combs, brushes, talcs, and shining mirrors were in abundance, as well as fresh clothes, shoes, and all kinds of ornaments. As the men bathed and put on their clothes and armor, the gods and apsaras left the hermitage and returned to the heavens. The army was astonished by the night's events, which seemed like a dream. They looked around at the hermitage, which had returned to its normal appearance. Everything had disappeared, except for the celestial garlands strewn about, which, although crushed, were as fresh as they had been at the beginning of the night. As the sun rose, Barata went to Bharadwaj. After the sage's morning prayers, the prince bowed before him and asked his permission to leave. Bharadwaj blessed him and said, "I trust you and your followers spent an enjoyable night. Please tell me if there is anything else I can do for you." Bharata thanked him for his hospitality and asked to be shown the way towards Ram's hut in the woods. The sage smiled and said, "There is a mountain some 20 miles from here named Chitrakut, full of lovely caves and groves. On the northern side of that mountain, shaded by blossoming trees, flows the Mandakini River. There, by that river, you'll find your two brothers." As the sage spoke, Kaushalya and Sumitra got down from their chariot and clasped his feet. They thanked him profusely as they anticipated seeing Ram. Kaikeyi also came to the sage and shamefully bowed before him, feeling guilty at heart. Looking at her with compassion, the sage asked Bharata, "Please tell me, who are these noble ladies?" Bharata indicated Kaushalya, saying, "This godly lady is the mother of the lion-like Ram. Afflicted with grief, she is emaciated with fasting. Clinging to her arm is the celebrated Sumitra, the mother of Laxmana and Chitrakut, those two great heroes." Becoming angry, hissing like a cobra as he spoke, Bharata indicated Kaikeyi. "This one is my own mother, the wicked and vulgar Kaikeyi. It was by her intrigues that the great Emperor Dasratha died from anguish, and the mighty Ram now resides in a lonely mountain reach." Bharadwaj, who knew the plans of the gods and the divine arrangements of the Supreme Lord, said to Bharata, "You should not censure your mother, O great prince. Do not think her guilty, for Ram's banishment will result in good to the entire universe. Indeed, it will bring happiness to the gods, demons, and rishis, along with the whole of creation. Bharata blushed deeply. He had been piercing his mother with angry looks, and he felt rebuked by the sage. Unable to immediately subdue his anger, he averted his gaze and tried to assimilate Bharadwaj's instructions. He stood up and walked respectfully around the sage. Receiving his permission to leave, Bharata ordered the army to depart and mounted upon his chariot. Guha accompanied the two princes. As the huge mass of men moved off through the woods, they made a great noise, terrifying the deer and birds dwelling there. Slowly approaching the Chitrakut mountain, they all thought only of Ram, longing to see him again. And we're going to read just a little bit. Let's see how far. There we go. 5 pages. 3 months had passed since Ram, this is the next chapter. Ram remains firm. Ram had settled on the Chitrakut mountain. Living peacefully in their thatched cottage, Ram, along with Laxman and Sita, was happy. From their hut, they could see the top of the mountain, some of which was yellow, some red as madder, M-A-D-D-E-R, madder, something. Some glittering silver and some blue-green like a shining emerald. Thousands of other subdued hues shone on the side of the great mountain, and it teemed with deer of every description and hosts of harmless tigers, leopards, and bears. Trees laden with flowers and fruits were crowded with various varieties of colorful, sweet-singing birds. Clear rivulets flowed from countless springs, and waterfalls sparkled in the sunshine. He's a really good writer. Ram felt gladdened at heart to see all this, and sitting at ease on the porch of his hut, he spoke with Sita. Look at the Kinnaras as they sport on these delightful slopes, having descended from their own planets. See also the Vidyadharas and Gandharvas courting their womenfolk after hanging their swords and other weapons from the boughs of the trees. This place is finer even than heaven. Surely we will easily spend 14 summers here as if they were a month. Sita smiled. She felt joyful to be living there with Ram. Despite his simplicity, she liked forest life, preferring it even to her life of luxury in the city. She looked down at the Mandakini River, where lines of ascetics, clad only in loincloths, stood in the water with their arms upraised as they worshipped the sun. A cool breeze carried the aroma of tree blossoms, which cascaded on all sides of the mountain. On the sandy bank of the river, heavenly siddhas were appearing and disappearing, moving about in delight. Further down the river, she saw a group of elephants standing amid the red and white lotuses as they drank the clear water. Ram continued, let us take our midday bath in the river, O princess. With you by my side, do not miss any of my relatives or even Ayodhya itself. Your beauty puts to shame the so-called beauty of these heavenly damsels, and it gives me newer and newer pleasure. Ram looked at his brother, who stood at a distance holding his bow. The godly Laxman stands over there, equipped with weapons and ready to carry out my every command. Living on the delicious forest fare he gathers, we reside here most happily, dear Sita. What more could I desire, even if I lived in Ayodhya? Ram and Sita descended to the river and found a secluded spot to take their bath. After bathing and sporting for some time in the cool waters, they came out and sat in the sun on a large flat rock. As Ram conversed with Sita, he noticed in the distance a cloud of dust rising in the sky. Looking around, he saw frightened animals running in all directions and heard a terrific noise which became progressively louder. Ram called out to his brother, Laxmana, What do you think is causing this disturbance? A sound like a terrible crash of thunder is coming from the north. Is some king or prince out hunting in the forest, followed by his army, or some vast herd of beasts on the move? Please go and see. Laxman immediately climbed a tall tree and looked all around. Fixing his gaze on the north, he saw in the distance a large army, crowded with elephants, horses, and chariots, joined with a mass of marching foot soldiers. He shouted to Ram and informed him, "Let Sita quickly find a cave," Lakshman advised Ram. "Extinguish the fire so that the smoke will not be seen. We two shall stand here clothed in mail and holding upraised weapons, for a powerful army approaches." Ram, who was not at all fearful, replied to Lakshman, "Look carefully at the ensigns as the flags. Try to determine whose army you think it might be." Lakshmana stared at the head of the army and saw a tall flag waving in the breeze, bearing the emblem of a Kovidara tree. The prince became infuriated and looked at the army as if he might consume it with his gaze alone. "Clearly, this is Bharata's army," he exclaimed. "I see there the mark of the Kovidara. Evidently, he has secured the throne of Ayodhya and now desires to attain undisputed sovereignty by killing us both. Even now, I see swift horses going ahead to seek us out." Laxman seethed with anger. "It is fortunate indeed that I shall now see Bharata's face, for whose sake you are enduring this forced life deprived of your sovereign right. Surely he has come here as an enemy, and as such deserves to be killed outright. I see no sin in this action, O Ram, for Bharata has sorely wronged you." Lakshman descended from the tree and picked up his weapons. He held his sword aloft. "Today, Kaikeyi, who is so desirous of the kingdom, will be seized with sorrow when she sees her son slain by me. I shall then kill her also." He's really fiery. "Let the earth drink the blood of these two, all these warriors. Beasts of prey will drag about the corpses of elephants and horses, as well as thousands of men pierced by my arrows. Killing Bharata along with his army, I will repay my debt to my weapons." Ram replied gravely to the enraged Lakshman, "These sentiments do not befit you, my dear brother. The mighty Bharata has come here longing to see us, and you wish to greet him with weapons. I have given my word of honor to remain in the forest. How then can I forcefully take the kingdom from Bharata, thereby gaining a sovereignty stained with infamy?" Feeling admonished by his brother, Lakshman looked down and sheathed his sword. Ram continued, "I will never accept a royal fortune won at the cost of the death of my kinsmen. Indeed, I would only accept the kingdom for the pleasure and the protection of my relatives. I have no personal desire for sovereignty. If any joy should come to me that is not enjoyed by yourself, Bharata, or Shatrughna, then let it be reduced to ashes." Ram knew Bharata's heart. Bharata was no less devoted to him than Laxman. He could understand why his brother had come to see him. He also longed to see Bharata. Comforting Laxman, Ram said, "When Bharata heard of my exile, I am sure he would have felt his heart overwhelmed with affection and his mind distracted by grief. After censuring Kaikeyi with harsh words, he no doubt left Ayodhya intent on bringing me back. Of this I feel certain." Lakshman felt ashamed to have spoken angrily about Bharata. He remembered the close and loving relationships the four brothers had enjoyed in childhood. Ram was right. Bharata could not possibly have come in a martial spirit. Lakshman blushed as Ram continued, "I cannot imagine Bharata harming us, even in his mind." Ram said gently, "Has he somehow previously offended you, dear brother, so that you wax so wrathful toward him now? If you are so set upon the slaughter of Bharata, then I shall order him to hand over the kingdom to you this very day. Certainly he'll remain here in your place, clad in tree barks, while you rule over the broad earth. You got him. Laxman shrank with shame. It had been wrong of him to think so badly of Barata. There was never a time when any malice or envy had been seen in that prince. Laxman had tried to make amends for his previous outburst. It must be, as you say, dear Ram. I think the mighty armed emperor himself has personally come here, accompanied by Bharata. Our father will doubtlessly try to persuade us to return, handing you the sovereignty refused by Bharata. Indeed, I saw father's gigantic elephant, Shatrunjaya, rocking about at the head of the army as it marched. From their vantage point on the mountain side, Ram could see the army coming into view. Spotting the king's elephant, he felt a sudden apprehension. Why was there no white umbrella held over its back? Shatrunjaya would not have come without the king, unless, that is, there was no king. Ram was fearful. Along with Lakshman and Sita, he waited near his hut for Bharata's arrival. And there's only one partial section, and we're done. When they reached the mountain, Bharata detailed a number of expert trackers to go in search of Ram's hermitage. He himself went ahead on horseback and began searching on foot when he reached the dense forest on the mountainside. Accompanied by Vashishta and other Brahmins, Bharata pressed ahead into the forest, anxious to see his brothers. He said to Vashishta, "Blessed is this mountain reach, O sage, where Ram and Sita now roam. How fortunate is Laxman, who always beholds the moon-like face of Ram. I long to hold Ram's feet on my head. There will be no peace for me until I see him duly consecrated and seated upon Ayodhya's throne." Bharata climbed a tall tree and gazed all around. Upon seeing a column of smoke, he surmised it will be coming from Ram's hermitage. Rejoicing, he descended quickly and went in that direction. Confident that they were now close to Ram, he sent Vashishta back to bring the queens. Then, along with Shatrughna and Guha, he went as quickly as possible up the mountain slope. As they arrived at a plateau, they suddenly burst into a clearing and saw there, on a leveled piece of ground, Ram's hut. Ram and Lakshman were sitting in front of the leafy cottage. Bharata saw the sacrificial fire placed on an altar, surrounded by blades of kusha grass. Hanging on the sides of the hut were two long bows, plated with gold and shining like rainbows. Large quivers filled with fearful-looking arrows stood by the bows, along with two great shields adorned with gold engravings. A couple of swords hung by the bows, sheathed in silver and gold. Like, each paragraph is really, he's a really good writer. When Bharata saw Ram dressed as an ascetic, his hair matted, he let out a cry and fell prostrate. Rising up again, he gazed with tear-filled eyes at his beloved brother, who appeared like Brahma, seated in his celestial assembly hall. Ram turned and smiled at Bharata, who, along with Shatrughna, was rushing toward him, stumbling even as he ran over level ground. Bharata swiftly approached Ram and fell before him. In a choked voice, he began to lament, "Alas! Here is my elder brother, who deserves to sit on the royal assembly, now seated in the company of deer. What a cruel destiny! Here is that exalted soul who should wear garments worthy of thousands, worthy garments worth many thousands. Here is that exalted soul who should wear garments worth many thousands, wearing the bark of trees. All this is on my account. Woe to me, condemned by all the world." Sobs stifled Bharata's voice as he lay near Ram, his hands stretched towards his brother's feet. His face was covered with perspiration, And he called out, "Oh, my brother, my noble brother!" Shatrughna also shed tears and bowed before Ram. Ram and Laxman quickly got up and closely embraced both of their brothers. The four princes coming together appeared as if the sun and the moon had joined with Venus and Jupiter in the heavens. Ram asked Bharata what had brought him away from Ayodhya. Surprised to see him with matted locks and wearing a deerskin, Ram said, "Why have you come here without our father, dearest brother? I hope all is well in Ayodhya. As long as father lives, you should surely wait upon him with great attention. Still, I am glad to see you here, although you appear pale and emaciated. Why the ascetic dress, noble Bharat? I think your love for me must be very deep." Ram gently stroked Bharata's head. Looking up, he saw Guha standing at a distance with folded palms, and he smiled at him. Ram was fully absorbed in loving exchanges with his friends and relatives. Feeling pain and concern to see Bharata's condition, he continued to speak. "I hope you have not lost the kingdom due to immaturity and inexperience. Surely you know all the facets of diplomacy and kingly science, O powerful prince." By way of loving instruction, Ram asked after many aspects of the kingdom. He inquired if the people were properly protected, the animals cared for, the army well maintained, and the Brahmins giving sufficient charity. Bharata listened respectfully as his elder brother spoke. I see here all my mothers," said Ram. "Indeed, it seems that the entire kingdom of Koshala has accompanied you, dear Bharata. This gives rise to grave doubts in my mind. Please tell me why you have arrived here today, for you have aroused my curiosity." Bharata knelt before Ram, clasping his feet. "Dear Ram, the act perpetrated by my mother was wicked and never approved by me. Casting you into the forest and afflicting the whole of Ayodhya with unbearable pain, she hoped to see me installed as the king. That will never happen. Please return with us now, O Raghava, and take your rightful position as ruler of this world. Be kind to me and to all the people, O tiger among men." Ram felt compassion for Bharata. He questioned him again. "What need is there for your adopting this mode of ascetic life, dear Bharata? The order of our father is that you become the king. I too stand enjoined by our father to remain here in the forest. Our pious father's order is supreme. Therefore, without censuring your mother Kaikeyi, you should enjoy the kingdom. For myself, I am happier staying here in obedience to our father than I would in attaining to the imperishable abode of Brahma." Bharata's head sank. He knew his elder brother's mind. It would be impossible to convince Ram to transgress an order given by his elders. Still, he felt impelled to try. He could not possibly take the throne in place of Ram. With heavy heart, Bharata informed Ram of what had happened in Ayodhya. "While I was away in Kaya kingdom, and you had already gone to the forest, our glorious father ascended to heaven. Thinking only of you and lost in grief at your separation, the king left his mortal body. Now, by the time honored rule, you, as the elder son, should inherit the kingdom. There cannot be any doubt on this point." As he heard for the first time the news of his father's death, Ram felt as if his heart had been pierced. Raising his arms and crying out, he sank to the ground like a tree filled with blossoms cut at its root. He lay motionless, with the color drained from his face. Bharata quickly sprinkled him with cool water. Ram sat up and held his head, wailing piteously. "With my father dead and gone, what shall I do in Ayodhya? Alas, I'm surely a wretched and useless son. My father died because of me, nor was I even able to cremate him. Even when the 14 years expires, I shall not have the courage to return to the city, seeing it desolate and bereft of its protector. Who will now speak those kind and loving words my father spoke when he saw me well behaved?" Ram went over to Sita and Lakshman, who were seated nearby. Dear Sita, your father-in-law is no more. O Lakshman, you are now fatherless. O brother, our brother brings the sorrowful news of the king's ascent to heaven. This world now stands without a ruler. Sita's eyes filled with tears. It's like one sorrowful situation after the next. It's like too much. Whew. Sita's eyes filled with tears, and she was unable to look at her husband. Ram and Lakshman wept, along with Sita, as Bharata and Shatrughna comforted them. Ram controlled his feelings and said, I must now perform the last sacred rites for the king. Let us go to the river. The four princes and Sita, stumbling due to their grief, descended with difficulty to the river bank. They were assisted by Sumantra and other ministers of the king, who stood watching as Ram entered the water along with his brothers and Sita. Ram faced the southern quarter, over which Yamaraj presides, and held water in his cup palms. He let the water trickle through his fingers and said in a choked voice, May this sacred water reach you, O great tiger among men, among kings. Let this offering serve you, dear Father, who have gone forever to the world of our forefathers. Last paragraph. Ram offered prayers for his father and then returned to his hermitage to prepare an offering of food for the departed king. After the offering was made, Ram and his brothers clasped each other's hands and began to wail loudly. The sound was like the roaring of lions, and it reverberated all around the mountain passes. Lots of emotion. Makes you kind of wonder, like, why do people like Ramayana so much? There's, how old are you? 7.5? 7.5. I know a young girl who wouldn't go to bed without reading Ramayana. And even if the family was doing something together, she would want to read Ramayana before going to bed. And her father said, it's too late. So during one question and answer session at their home, she said, could you tell my father to let me read Ramayana before I go to bed? It's not, not Krishna conscious. You should let me read Ramayana before I go to bed. She was about your age when she was doing that. I think she's reading something else by now, but there's certainly charm, and one becomes drawn to the personalities, the virtue and exaltedness and the intensity of their love and the quality of their exchanges. A culture that we just don't know in this world so much. But this is the personality of Godhead showing his transcendental pastimes at a point that we've discussed almost every class, because there's sorrow and sorrow and sorrow everywhere. This point is that it's a secondary rasa that nourishes the primary rasa. You understand that one? There's 5 primary rasas. You know that, right? Neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. Neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. So those are the 5 primary. And even you leave out the neutrality, there's 4. And secondary rasas are not primary, they're secondary. but they strengthen and nourish the primary. They're there for that purpose. And then they mix sometimes. Sometimes when the secondary rasa becomes very strong, it seems to overwhelm the primary rasa, but it doesn't. It just becomes very prominent for some time and then subsides, because always there is the primary rasa. And this, and Lord Ramachandra is the presiding deity of this secondary rasa. I mean, there's a Sanskrit term, but it's sorrow. It nourishes the primary rasa. So there's a lot of sorrow in Ramayana. I mean, it ends up nice, but in the course of these exchanges, the elevated character of the elevated devotees of the Lord shine. I sure wouldn't want to be Kaikeyi, because although Bharadwaj said, "Don't speak this way about your mother," because it's all a providential arrangement for the good of the whole world. But it creates a lot of misery, the course of doing good for the whole world. Not a lovely situation to be in. So one way that we can think about what Kaikeyi did is Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita. Apichet Daracharo. You know that verse? Apichet su durachar. Durachar. Achar is behavior. Durachar is bad behavior. And su durachar is really bad behavior. Apichet su daracharo. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Those who engage in my undivided devotional service. Sadhureva. I guess we can think of Kaikeyi as a sadhu. Really bad behavior. Sudurachar. But she was actually devoted to Ram. And the way that she spoke and behaved and so forth was unbecoming and uncharacteristic. And that was what surprised everybody. It surprised Barata when he heard, "What? You've always said you have so much affection for Ram like for me. So what got into you? What happened?" Anyway, it's part of Ram's Leela. The puzzle, the enigma surrounding what Kaikeyi said and did sets the whole stage for all this loving exchange, and for Ram giving his association to the sages in the forest and killing the Rakshasas, which is what he appeared for. But reading it, that doesn't feel good unless you have some transcendental picture of, like Bharadwaj. And in one sense, life is like that. There are things in life that just don't seem right. I know some things that just don't seem right. Too many of them just don't seem right. What, there's this interesting contrast related to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching and his pastimes. When one becomes, specifically in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj writes a verse in essence that says, um, one who becomes attached to the Lord very quickly receives his mercy. And then there's another reference in his writing that says, Krishna says to the gopis, sometimes when it looks like there's a situation of opposition between myself and my devotees, but that's just to increase their attachment for me. That's not such a good paraphrase. It's not exactly what Krishna says to the gopis, but the essence is there. Difficulties in life, you bring it down from the Ramayana platform to the practical application platform. There are difficulties in life that sometimes just very perplexing. Ask the question, why? You don't get an answer. That there's some plan, but what that plan and why is things unfolding this way? Very perplexing sometimes. However, the devotees don't lose their faith. This is the virtue of Ram. And sometimes when he goes off, Laxman brings him back on. The standard of virtue, stand by truth, stand by what's the injunctions of scripture that tell us what the standard of truth is, and just abide there, and your protection is there, whatever the plan of the Lord is. There's some devotees I know that they like Ramayana so much, there are certain passages that they hang on to, they support their personal lives, and when certain situations arise, they can recite them and there's shelter. So what we're doing is kind of just quick reading in English, but the meaningful verses spoken again and again, recited again and again, they're the fundamental structures for a wholesome life. In a circumstance where there's turmoil, Ramayana has that potency. Let's see if there's some discussion. Anything in the room, and we'll see if there's something online after that.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Were all four brothers Vishnu Tattva
Yes.
the way?
Well, I said yes. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the answer is yes. In Padma Purana, the answer is no. In Padma Purana, there's Vishnu or Narayana, and then the paraphernalia of Vishnu. And that's how Sri Vaishnavas take it commonly, is my understanding. But our understanding is very clear, the Chaturvyuha, Vishnu Tattva.
I found it interesting that so Bharat is also an
Yeah.
expansion, and all this worry about people blaming him, who is Vishnu, for being not properly behaved towards also Vishnu as Ram, and that's almost offensive also. So it was interesting that he's just having so many pastimes, some roles being
Yes.
blamed, other roles
Yes.
being mad at himself in as Vishnu.
Well, and they're experiencing, as well as teaching lessons, they're experiencing ecstasies, loving ecstasies, even being accused falsely. Even Krishna was accused falsely.
And in the description, when Bharat approaches their cottage, it said that there was a sacrificial fire. So I thought it's Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, all of them expansions. I'm not sure who they are. I mean, the sacrificial fire would be just displaying
Yeah,
the duty as, but even when they are by themselves,
yeah,
they still have the sacrificial fire for the
yeah,
Lord.
yeah, yeah. He's enjoying. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, but yeah, as if a human, and that's one of the. This was discussed yesterday evening. It's one of the features that makes Ramayana so charming and attractive. It's so his pastimes are so human-like. All of it. And one can just be attracted to the human likeness of it. What to speak of the divinity? And in the different Ramayanas, there's different degrees of emphasis on his divinity, and then so you emphasize his divinity in different degrees, and then there's this humanness. It's very charming, and you can say it's perplexing, but it's also very charming. And it's really the other way around. Where it is his likeness, not he's like us. Okay, anything else here?
Why does Krishna want his devotees to be glorified?
Why does Krishna want his devotees to be glorified?
Yeah.
Well, because his devotees are dear to him, he likes to see them glorified.
Okay. And
That's
another.
easy, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, next.
I have Bhagavatam classes with Aruddha Mataji, so we were reading about Putana, and it said that they cut her body into pieces. Why did they do that?
Well, because it got really big. And it was 8 miles long. That's big. It's like, we got to get rid of this. That's why.
Okay.
And as they did, what happened? It smelled like fragrance,
Yeah.
like a guru scent.
Mhm.
Generally, bodies when they deteriorate, it doesn't smell good. So like um, that's another reason, the bad smell, but also the spirit soul. If they hadn't seen where the spirit soul had gone, the spirit soul could hang around the body. So in Vedic culture, bodies are burned. But her body was too big. It was 8 miles long. They had to cut it in pieces.
Okay.
We have something online or no? Yes?
Question from Uttam Bhaktadas. Lord Rama helps us cultivate divine love through ideal family and social conventions, whereas Lord Krishna helps us see beyond those conventions. How to understand what Lord Krishna is trying to show
How
us?
does what?
How to understand what Lord Krishna is trying to show us?
He's trying to show us life in Goloka Vrindavan. And life that is filled with rasa. That's one of those two. The main emphasis from our Gaudiya perspective, and one of the reasons why it's difficult to understand Krishna's pastimes, because it looks like looks like so many things. Doesn't look like conventional. Whereas Ram, one wife, Krishna, 16,000. And 16,000 forms of Krishna. So he does so many things that are not conventional. But he's showing his in each of those things. The special feature of it is, and what the lesson is, that the sweetness of the loving exchanges, and so many varieties of ways with what Krishna does. That's the attractiveness and the lesson.
Next question from Swetadweep Prabhu. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.18, it mentions that everyone has certain quota for happiness and distress, resulting one's prior / current karmic baggage. Therefore, instead, use our energy in understanding Krishna. How do we understand this and apply in our lives in a practical way?
Well, how do you understand it and apply it in a practical way? You'll let go of the temporary, you take shelter of the eternal. And what does that look like? Well, it's going to look like a little bit different for each person, and most of us can't do it so quickly. But it's a direction to move in. There's the temporary that we think is all important, and the eternal is covered because our thinking the temporary is all important. The Maya covers intelligence. So how to understand it and practically apply it is move in that direction. It's a goal, attachment to the eternal, and letting go, little by little of the all importance of the temporary. We don't throw the temporary away, but it's not all important to us. That's how to apply it. And as you apply it, then you'll understand it better. Nice question.
Next question, also from Uttam Bhaktadas. Ramayana has touched hearts all the way to Far Eastern countries and even some Muslim countries. I sometimes wonder why the same effect hasn't been seen in Europe and beyond.
Why, what hasn't been?
The effect of Ramayana.
Well, I don't know if your assessment is right or not. I mean, to what extent? My understanding is there during certain periods of European history, there were waves of interest in the Vedas. The direct Vedas themselves, as well as the Puranas and Itihasas. So I don't know if the assessment is correct. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was driving today, and the car in front of me had a bumper sticker saying "Just be nice."
Just see life,
Just be nice.
light,
Nice.
Light.
No. NICE. Nice. Just be nice.
Just be nice.
Yeah. And I thought it's a simple message. Everyone understands it. Also powerful. But when I remember a conversation where Srila Prabhupada was asked, isn't it sufficient to just be good? And he said, what is good?
Yes.
That which pleases Krishna. But if someone, Kanishta Adhikari or Madhyam Adhikari, people who are not very familiar with all the Shastras and might not know all the details of what pleases Krishna, is that message, what does that message mean in the Vaishnava world, the just be nice? Are there some basic behaviors that everyone could follow as they progress?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean, just be nice could mean for a worldly person, but you're asking from the Vaishnava perspective. It's whatever people think the mode of goodness is, that's what nice is. So specific to your question, what does just be nice mean to a Vaishnava? That's your question.
Especially someone new coming into the philosophy, is that something they can follow as they progress in knowledge?
Oh, that's a different question. Well, my answer is yeah, but. And again, a response is what does nice mean? What does being good mean? And if you take the everyday garden variety of worldly sense of what nice means, that's it's really it's a doesn't even come close to a life of a Vaishnav. But how your question specifically is, if should we encourage newcomers in that direction, and is that a good place for them to begin trying to be Krishna conscious? Is just be nice. I guess it depends on how not nice they are. No, it's what I mean by that is, if you say, be vegetarian, and that's a place to begin. It's that's not what Vaishnava life is, but is that something that a newcomer could hang their hat on? It's the beginning. There's so much more, but that's the beginning. And why be vegetarian? Then there's different reasons. So be nice, just be nice. I mean, it's something recognizable, something that feels good. We don't say don't be nice. We say be nice. But what does nice mean? And then you start to get into what is Vaishnava life of what does being nice mean? I was, as you're first asking the question, I was thinking about cleanliness. And Prabhupada had a very high standard of cleanliness. So much so that it was hard to be around him for people that weren't prepared to move to a standard of cleanliness that was, he meant cleanliness, summit cleanliness. When people that have us, so it has to something to do with being nice. What does nice mean? I've had experience when out of curiosity, I'm traveling and people, are you a monk? No. Are you a Buddhist monk? That's the opening line. Do you mind sharing with me some of your basic ideas? And they hear what the basic ideas are, and their response is, oh, that sounds a lot like what I believe in. One should be good and not hurt other people. That's not what I said, but that's what they heard. So be nice. Don't be kind to other people. Don't hurt other people. Here's another, the bumper sticker. So there was a sign coming from New York through the Holland Tunnel on the other side, a big billboard, commit a random act of kindness. That's the beginning for some people. So I guess a lot depends on where they're coming from and what their understanding of. Because with new people, you like to get them, you like to meet on a common ground, and then show them the bridge that goes to, higher consciousness. And what's a step that's a higher consciousness step for them depends on, depends. Saying, with cleanliness or truthfulness or compassion or charity or simplicity or depends. The life of the mode of goodness. Different people are going to have different ideas of what that is. Being good. Be nice. You wanted to add something.
I remember a long time ago reading about the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava.
Ah,
And so I figured if that makes sense here.
hold the
Maybe
microphone this way, because then I'll hear you.
Is it better?
Much better.
Okay. Yeah, it's not omnidirectional. I think it's like
No.
unidirectional.
Yeah.
Almost have to swallow it. Yeah, so I was reading about the 26 qualities for Vaishnava a few years ago. And so I just looked up a few things, and a lot of what we discussed obviously come from there.
Okay.
So my question is that any one thing out of those qualities that are necessary for the others to follow?
Yes.
And which one might that be?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is from Rupa Goswami. There's Swarup Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana. Lakshana means characteristics. So Krishna Eka Sharana. That's the one. And then the other 25 are the secondary. Krishna Eka Sharana. And from Bhagavad Gita, it's the same. The language is different, but the same. Mai Chananya Yogina Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 8 through 12. Undivided devotion to Krishna. And from that, the others come. And how do you get that? Then Acharya Upasana. So those, and they're the foundation, and upon the foundation, the house is built. The life of good character. Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
similar?
Similar, yes. As long as there's a pause here. Do we have something online? More? One more? But for the Memorial Day weekend, we're not going to be able to go to Gitanagari because of COVID. So we're going to do something somewhere. A little community in Ypsilanti, Michigan, near Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. There's a nice community of devotees there. So the theme is going to be Vaishnav Achar and authenticity are the two possible simultaneously. So they're not only possible simultaneously, but then it comes what's authenticity, like what's good and what's being nice, what's authenticity. And real authenticity means who you are. So the other authenticity is, I'm the kind of person who blah, blah, blah. And that's not who we really are. That's not authenticity. So Vaishnav quality, Vaishnav character, what's authentic. Then comes, well, I'm not there yet. I'm not a self-realized soul, so I got to be authentic, right? I have to be who I am. My conditioned being accepting of, and we'll have that discussion. But, so setting your sight on what real being nice is, what real being good is, what real happiness is, what real character is, what real good qualities are, what real truthfulness is. I mean, Ram's got the real truthfulness down. We'll never depart from the truth. Okay, let's do the one more online one, and I guess we're done.
From Giridhar Govindarajan. Your narration of Ramayana are so sweet. Any plans to write a book on the beautiful narrations?
Nope. There's plenty of books on the beautiful narrations. I have some other ideas, but not that one. Okay, anything? No? Okay. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.